Are you tired of living paycheck to paycheck? Do you ever get to the point where you feel like you're finally getting a little bit ahead only to have some big bill or some big expense come up to where all of a sudden now not only are you not ahead anymore, but you're actually behind and having to borrow money just to catch up again? Or maybe you've gotten in so far over your head that your bills are such to where you just don't know how you're ever going to get out of them. Well, these are the very types of a thing that George Clason was trying to assist in his Richest Man in Babylon, and we want to look at some of the principles contained within that book today that will help us to get to the point where we're no longer living from paycheck to paycheck, and we're no longer always struggling to get ahead, but we're actually taking some very thoughtful actions in order to make sure that we're being as prudent with the money that we have as we possibly can. Well, I'm Rick Bloodworth. This is the Common Sense Christian Channel, and today we're going to talk about what do we do when we find we're just living from paycheck to paycheck. And again, I want to go back to George Clason's book on the Richest Man in Babylon and talk about his 7 cures for a lean purse. If you watched last week's episode, you saw the first 2 cures, but the idea of this whole book, The Richest Man in Babylon, is it's a fictional account that's set into a historical setting that gives some strategies for living better financially, to the point where you can not only get ahead, but maybe you can get a little more comfortable and maybe even get to the point where you can help other people in ways that you only dreamed was possible in the past. And so let's go ahead and jump into it. Remember, from last week, our CAD has been asked by the king of Babylon to teach a group of 100 men his secrets for wealth. And so he starts off with 7 cures for a lean purse, which in our modern vernacular would be 7 cures for an empty bank account. And so let's talk about some of those. Last week we looked at the first 2 cures. The first cure was this: start thy purse to fattening. In modern times, we're just talking about start to save something. His recommendation was that you pay yourself first, that before you start any other expenses, that you take 10% of your income off the top and you do use that for savings. Now, from a Christian perspective, we realize that our first duty is to God and that we're to give to Him first. Now, in the Old Testament, they tithed of their income, a 10% portion of their income, but that's not what we're commanded within the New Testament. We're commanded to give on the first day of the week. We're commanded to give in keeping with our income. We're commanded to give cheerfully and generously. And so the actual percentage is going to be up to you. And nobody knows what your situation is as well as you do. So you figure out the best you can do for where you're at now, and you give from that. So first, give to God, but then after you have got your take-home pay and you've given your contribution, now you take 10% off the top. Pay yourself first and use that for some kind of a savings account to where you can start getting a little bit ahead. The second cure for a lean purse that he had was to control thy expenditures. In modern vernacular, get a budget. Mr. Clason used an example of a pack animal, and he was talking about if a pack animal was choosing what he was going to take on a trip, he would probably take things like food and water, things that he needed. Well, while we're not pack animals, sometimes we feel that way. A budget is not going to force you into something. A budget is going to let you choose for yourself those items that you think are the most important expenditures as far as the paycheck that you make, as far as taking out from your earnings. So by all means, make a budget. Get some kind of control over the outcome of your hard-earned money. The third cure, and this will be a new one for today, is make thy gold multiply. In other words, once you've started saving 10%, put it into something, some sort of an investment that will have a return on it. There's all sorts of investments out there, and there's all sorts of different advice on what to put it into. I really am not trying to give you any financial advice. I'm just going to try and give you some strategies as to what you might do. If you're in deep debt right now and you take that 10%, you're able to make your debt payments with the other 90%. But you take that 10%, I would take about a third of that and I would just use it to start paying down a little bit extra on your debt. You'll find that that will go a long way, and now you're not paying an interest rate on your credit card bills for that portion. So you've got an instant return on that part of your investment. For another third of that 10%, maybe I just put it into cash. I'd put it aside for something that I might need on a rainy day, because it does rain in life. It's not a question of if you'll have unexpected expenses, but when. And so put 10% of it aside, or excuse me, 3% of your 10% savings into just cash, and just keep that on hand for an emergency. And then maybe with the other third, use it for some kind of an investment that you have checked out that you feel to be prudent. Maybe it's a mutual fund that mimics the stock market. Maybe you're not comfortable with where the stock market is, and so you want to put that third of your 10% off the top into something like just investment into gold or silver or something like that, that you can just have on hand that won't ever go away unless you decide to sell it. Maybe you're going to start saving up for a real estate purchase or something like that. But whatever you do, make your investment multiply. Make thy gold multiply is the third cure for a lean purse. Once you start saving, invest it prudently. The fourth cure for a lean purse is very closely related to that. It's guard thy treasures from loss. Arcad, who is teaching this class, the richest man in Babylon, said this: when he first started investing, he gave all of his funds to a brickmaker who was going to Tyre to invest his funds into some precious stones, which he was going to bring back to Babylon with the idea of making great profit. Well, the brickmaker didn't know anything about precious stones, so the Phoenicians cheated him. And so he lost all of his investment, but so too did Arcad. So Arcad learned the important point of don't be investing in things you don't know about. There's a lot of us that are tempted to listen to our Uncle Bob or Aunt Ruth or our next door neighbor on what they think is a great investment, but do they really know what they're talking about? Or are you putting your trust and your hard-earned money with somebody who is essentially a brickmaker who's investing in precious stones? Make sure you're being prudent. Arcad talked about his best investment was when he took some of his savings and he invested it with a shield maker who was taking those funds to buy bronze with which he was going to make those shields. And then once he sold the shields, he would return Arcad's initial investment with what he called a rental, a return on that investment. And Arcad did so well with that investment that he just kept taking the proceeds, not just the original investment, but what he'd made off the rental, and just kept putting it back with the shield maker to where he was continually making a reasonable and fairly well-guarded income. And so this is the fourth cure for a lean purse. Guard thy treasures from loss. Invest in things that you can prudently expect to make a reasonable return from. The fifth cure for a lean purse is this: make thy dwelling a profitable investment. In modern vernacular, that means buy instead of rent. Now, I want to issue a few words of caution on that. Sometimes renting is the best way to go for the circumstances that you find yourself in. But if you're thinking about buying a home, then start doing your due diligence. Find out what your total costs of renting the house or the apartment that you're in are. Find out not only what the rent is, but if you're paying renter's insurance for the contents of the home you're staying in. Include all the utilities that you're paying, your electric, your gas, your water bill. Include also things like your cable and your internet or satellite. Include your cell phone. Used to, that was just a standard utility because the phone was hooked to the house directly into the wall. Now sometimes people don't think about that, but put all these expenses into your rental expenses, and now you've got something with which to use as a baseline. And so now you can start figuring out what you can afford in a home. You can figure out, first of all, what the mortgage payment is going to be, what the cost of real estate taxes are going to be, what your insurance is going to be, not just for the contents like renter's insurance, but also for damage to the home. Figure out, again, all your utilities and your cell phone and your internet and all these things that you're using. And then you've got a figure with which to compare to what you're spending on rent. If the two are similar, or if the buying is less than the rent, then you've probably got a pretty good potential investment. Can something go wrong when you buy a house? And the answer is obviously they can. I used to appraise real estate in Casper, Wyoming. I appraised over 2,000 houses while I was there. When I started in the early 80s, the market was way up, but shortly after I got there, it just tanked because we had an oil bust. And Casper, Wyoming was very much energy dependent. And so houses literally went down anywhere from 40% to 60% in value. If you bought a home, could you handle that? Now that's a rare occasion, but these things do happen from time to time. And so you need to be aware that this is something that could happen. I'm not saying live in fear of it or make that prevent you from worrying about all the possible things that could happen. I'm just saying be realistic when you start to buy a home. The problem that people had in Casper was so many of them's jobs were energy related that they couldn't even afford to make the payments on their house anymore because they lost their job. And when they lost their job and they tried to sell their house, well, they had bought it at, say, $100,000, and now it's worth somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000. Well, they couldn't afford to take that kind of a loss, so a lot of people went into bankruptcy. I'm not saying this to scare you from buying a home. I'm just saying that things can happen. Be aware of that, and let all these things kind of go into your decision as to whether you're going to invest in real estate or just continue to rent. Now, having said that, more people have become millionaires investing in real estate than just about any other investment there is. So it's a good investment. It's just something that you need to be prudent in. If you're renting for $1,000 a month and your total expenses for buying a house are going to be $2,000 a month and you're barely making it now, buying that house is not going to be a good investment. But if your total investment in your rental property is $1,000 a month and you can get a house purchased, including potential repairs, for about $1,000 a month or less, then that's a great investment. So keep that in mind. But the fifth cure for a lean purse is to make thy dwelling place an investment. Buy instead of rent, if it makes sense in your circumstance to do that. The sixth cure for a lean purse is to ensure a future income. Now you may think, well, I'm already saving 10% of my income, but that's for different things. That's for things for possible unexpected expenditures. It's for paying down debt. It is for maybe buying a boat someday that you're saving cash for, or buying a car someday that you're saving cash for. But this retirement is a different account, and it's something that's going to be doable after you've gotten your budget under control. This may take you several years before you can add this retirement investment to your account, but the sooner you can do that, the better. Obviously, it's a lot better to start at 20 years old than it is at 60 years old. The person who wrote the Wealthy Barber, Dave Chilton, had a comment in that book that said the best time to plant an oak tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is now. So of course it would be better to start the earliest you can, but sometimes you have to wait. But this sixth cure for a lean purse, this investing in a retirement income, is very important. Social Security is probably not going to give you enough to live comfortably. It may not even give you enough to live at all in anywhere that's close to the way that you have a standard of living now. And so if you start investing now in a retirement income, you'll be really happy. Your 65-year-old self will thank your 30-year-old self when he gets to that point. So again, the sixth cure for a lean purse is to ensure a future income. If you start early, then you've got a lot of leeway on that. You can perhaps invest in the stock market, different indexes, and even different stocks if you're familiar enough with that. If you have a good financial advisor that can help you, that has a good proven track record, then you can do that. But if you start early, even though the stock market will go up and down, just like real estate will go up and down, just like gold and silver will go up and down, if you start early, over the long run, you're going to make a reasonable return on your investment. And so the earlier you start, the more options you will have as far as putting money aside for your future retirement. And the seventh cure for a lean purse is this: increase thy ability to earn. In other words, keep training, keep continuing education. If you have a dream job that's not part of your current employment, then start thinking about getting education that will allow you to do that dream job if education or training is needed for that. I have a good friend from years ago in Casper, Wyoming, that was making a really good income in the oil business. But as he got into his 30s, he started looking around and noticing a couple of things. One, the oil business has some pretty wild ups and downs, and the downs are really hard to ride out sometimes. But the second is the oil industry, with many of the jobs, is just downright dangerous. There's a lot of people that start the oil industry with all their fingers and toes that don't end up their career with all their fingers and toes. And he just wanted to not get so beat up to where he couldn't enjoy his later life. But he did have a dream of being a college professor someday. And so this guy, pretty intelligent guy at that, decided to stop working in the oil field, and he went to school. He and his wife made some cuts to their budget to where they could afford to do that. And he studied, and he studied very well, and he eventually got his doctorate degree. And then right after that, he was hired, or shortly after that, he was hired as a professor in Nevada. He's now a full-blown professor at a major university in Nevada and is having the time of his life. He loves teaching young people. He loves the research that they do. He's traveled all over the world doing different things with that research. All because he had the foresight to increase his ability to earn, and to do so in a way that was in a profession that he really loved doing. So that's the seventh cure for a lean purse. Increase thy ability to earn. Continued education, brand new education, brand new training. These are the things that will help you someday to where you're at a point where you're no longer living from paycheck to paycheck. Well, again, when we look at these strategies, they're going to differ for each person. That's why this can't be financial advice, because your situation is different from the guy right next to you's situation. You have to make the best determinations for your specific circumstances. But if you'll apply these 7 things, if you'll put something aside in savings, if you'll budget so that you can do that, if you'll invest those savings prudently, making sure that you are not investing in things that you're not certain about, some kind of a get-rich-quick scheme. If you are making your house an investment when you're able to buy, if you are looking at a way to start making some retirement savings, and if you are continuing to improve yourself and train yourself to be better at the job you're doing and make a better income, or to go to a different job that makes a better income, all these things will go into giving you a life that you've dreamed of. We all get sick and tired of just living from paycheck to paycheck. We all get sick and tired of finally getting a little bit ahead only to find out that some unexpected circumstance takes away everything we have and puts us even further into debt than we were when we started. And we all have dreams of doing something different someday, or doing something special someday, whether it's buying a boat and retiring on the lake, or whether it's just really being able to have more funds to help people in ways that you've always dreamed of doing. You can do that if you'll just start thinking about your stewardship to God now. These 7 methods of getting your head above water and keeping your head above water really will help you do that. But you're going to have some determination within yourself that says, I'm willing to make sacrifices now so that I can live a better life later. Well, again, I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that as Christians, our main goal is to please God, so that we can not only serve Him well here on earth, but so that we can serve Him for all eternity. We hear this all the time: the love of money is the root of all evil. That's not what the passage says. The passage says that the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. We say money's the root of all evil, but money is neutral. It's the love of money. It's when we make it into an idol. If you use any of these 7 steps and you allow them to start overruling or ruling your life to where you're giving more consideration to these steps and getting wealthy than you are to serving God, then this is just going to mess your life up. It's not going to enhance it. But if you will use these steps to live more prudently before God, to be a better steward for God, you're going to find that your life is really good. And then someday there will be heaven. I appreciate your tuning in today. If this has helped you, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. That'll really help my channel out. But until next time, I pray that God will richly bless your efforts as you seek to serve Him.